Chapter 5. Eddie's Dream. Although the sea was calm, Eddie didn't sleep well. He had a dream that seemed to last all night. It began with him lying in bed in the cabin of the ship and waking up to find himself in his old bedroom from his childhood. But the bedroom was on the ship. He sat up in the top bunk of some familiar bunk beds. In the bottom bunk should have been his sister Ellen, but he knew his wife was the occupant now. The bottom bunk was empty, however, and he saw water coming in quietly but rapidly under the door. In his dream, he jumped out of his bunk and straight into 1/2 meter of water. It was ice cold, and Eddie gasped in shock. He was wearing a grey suit and black shoes, but no socks, shirt or tie. With his feet already going numb in the cold water, he opened the small wardrobe to look for them and found a public telephone. Business cards were stuck all over the wall. He noticed his own from years ago with the familiar Fenton's logo, but his details were in Russian. His stomach was tight. His head ached. In his dreaming mind, 1,000 tasks and deadlines seemed to weigh upon his shoulders. The phone started ringing. He picked it up. "Where are you?" a voice shouted on the other end. It was Dominic. The unmistakable, cold, demanding tone of voice. "Do you know what time it is?" Eddie lifted the sleeve of his suit to look at his watch, but its face was frosted over and unclear. Water had got into it somehow. The hands were barely visible. "I can't tell," he heard himself say. "You can't tell the time? Typical. What's the matter with you? We're all waiting for you. Come on!" "Who's waiting for me? Where are you?" Eddie heard laughter in the background. "On the bridge, where do you think?" Then the line went dead. The water was up to Eddie's knees now and rising fast. He decided to leave the socks, shirt and tie and make his way to the bridge, dressed or not dressed. How much worse could it be? As Eddie opened the door, water poured in at waist level, and with it, thousands of champagne glasses. Most of them were intact, but many were broken. Too many for Eddie to avoid. His chest and legs were cut many times as he waded out into the corridor. He saw Clive at the far end. "Clive!" he shouted. "Clive, it's me! Over here!" But Clive didn't hear him. He too was struggling with the strong current of water, dragging him down and away at the far end of the corridor. "Clive!" shouted Eddie in his sleep. Opposite Eddie in the dream was a metal ladder which went up to the next level of the ship through a small hole. It was big enough for him to get through. This ladder led to another ladder and another hole, and another and another. Ladders stretched all the way in a giant tunnel leading upwards. Eddie climbed and climbed. He could hear the laughter getting louder, so he decided to follow the sound. When he reached the top, he suddenly found himself on the ship's funnel. It was dark, and a strong sea wind took his breath away. He was scared and excited at the same time. He thought the funnel would be hot, but it was not. It was at an angle, and he was looking up into the sky, almost touching the stars themselves. "They're stars, Lynn, not lights. You were wrong," he shouted again. In reality, his shouting woke Lynn up. Then he looked around and saw that the front part of the ship was already underwater and the ship was sinking. "Lynn!" he shouted. This time it was a scream. That was when he slipped and fell, and in his sleep flung out his arms to save himself. But there was no impact. Instead, he was now standing on the bridge of the ship, which was full of people from work, from his days at Fenton's. People he hadn't thought of in all this time. People he thought he'd never remember again. People he certainly didn't want to see again. Anne and Gary were there, but they were behind Dominic, who stood by the wheel in his captain's uniform, staring at him. He was older now and heavier, the way Eddie had seen him at the bar. "Glad you could join us. We're only sinking, you know." "What's going on?" said Eddie, looking around. The jazz band was playing in the corner, but the female singer was not the girl he had seen earlier. Instead, it was Lynn, singing a song whose name escaped him. "Lynn?" She didn't look at him. She was looking away and singing. "Lynn!" "What are you doing here?" shouted Eddie, confused and frightened. "I'm the captain. What does it look like?" said Dominic. "No, not you, Lynn. What's she doing here?" She wasn't paying him any attention. More and more people were coming onto the bridge. He saw Dima and Tatiana. They spoke in Russian. Eddie couldn't hear them over the laughter of the crowd. "Shh! I can't hear what they're saying, and I can't remember the name of the song." "Never mind that, Eddie. We've got more important things to do." "What?" Laughter. "We're sinking, no thanks to you." "Why? What have I done?" More laughter from the crowd. A familiar face appeared. It was Neil. "Champagne glasses, Eddie. Champagne glasses," he said. "What about them?" "What about them?" shouted Dominic. "They put a hole in the ship, you fool!" "That's impossible." Fear filled Eddie's mind and body. "Oh, really? Take a look around. Glass everywhere. Holes in the side of my ship." "It's not your ship," protested Eddie. "Who cares? We'll be underwater in 10 minutes. 15 at the most," added Neil. "Shut up, Neil. You're only here because of Dominic." Then he heard a loud buzzing. A giant helicopter arrived and flew over the front decks, and another, 3, 4, 5, dozens, like bees around a beehive, buzzing louder and louder. They flew around and shone powerful lights onto the bridge. So many lights. The noise and lights were unbearable. Then sirens, police sirens, people screaming. Eddie covered his ears and shut his eyes. He cried out, "Lynn!" The noise lessened, but the lights were bright, so bright. He was trying to open his eyes, but he couldn't. Now someone was pulling at his arms. "Let me go! Let me go!" he shouted. "Eddie!" Lynn said, trying to wake him up. "Lynn?" His eyes were opening. It was so bright. "It's all right. I'm here," she said, holding him. "We've got to get off. We're sinking." "It's all right," she said again. Then his eyes opened, and he was finally awake.